How many times have you heard this? It's a good game, just not a good insert blank. Just not a good Assassin's Creed game. Just not a good Resident Evil game. Just not a good Zelda game. It's usually a sentiment that gets quickly shot down because seriously, how can you enjoy something and still say it's bad? And I used to defend this position thinking people are just being whine babies on the internet again and can't accept change. After all, I enjoyed my time with Assassin's Creed Origins and I was one of those fans too. I was starting to feel like the series was getting stale. Resident Evil 4 back in the day, this was my introduction to the series. Every time I tried to pick up the older titles, they just felt archaic and clunky with those awful tank controls and pre-rendered backgrounds fighting against me. For a time, if you asked me, Breath of the Wild was my favorite game on Switch. I wouldn't have spent over 300 hours in this game if I didn't love my experience with it, but I have to admit, as cliche as it sounds, in my opinion, I just don't think it's a good Zelda game. Today I want to talk about reboots and open worlds. Specifically, why you may feel like your favorite series is having an identity crisis. I've seen many popular franchises that are still going strong today cocoon and then morph into what they are. All the way as far back as the original Nintendo, watching games like Castlevania, Mega Man, and The Legend of Zelda slowly transform with each iteration. I've also watched some of those franchises die or fall into obscurity, and it's always a gut punch when you feel like the series that helped shape your childhood has become a shadow of its former self. And with the recent push to reboot, remake, or remaster everything in recent years, as well as everything just needing to be bigger and better with bigger worlds and better graphics and more content, it's kind of exhausting, but I at least want to attempt to address it today. In 2005, Capcom released Resident Evil 4, and it was both a critical and commercial success. This nearly 20-year-old game has sold over 12 million copies. But back then, it was a radical departure, taking the entire series and doing a 180. Going from survival horror to more action-focused gameplay. When they did this, they lost a great deal of their original fans, but they also gained a great deal of new fans as well. These action games, they went on for years, continuing to alienate the original fans while pandering to the new fans. This ended up causing a massive divide in the fan base, and Resident Evil 6, still on the bandwagon of RE4, ended up being the straw that broke the camel's back, and nobody was happy at this point. It caused Capcom to course correct, and ever since it feels like they've been trying to go back to their roots. I will say this, Capcom has been listening to feedback, they've gained a lot of their relationship back with their core audience, and honestly, they've been setting a new bar when it comes to remakes. If there's one thing that sets them apart, it's consumer goodwill. Nintendo would do good to take some notes. I think a good start would be treating your legacy content with more respect. I feel like all that money that they use taking legal action against their own fans could be used in a more productive way, like, I don't know, making sure your older games are more easily accessible, rather than giving Donkey Kong slightly better fur and selling it back to us for $60. But that's not a reboot. I wouldn't even call it a remaster. Slap in the face, maybe? I very much like when we do get reboots to beloved franchises, like with the RE remakes. The Tomb Raider reboot series is one of these. They gave us a hell of a trilogy, with Shadow of the Tomb Raider being an excellent swan song. This is the Tomb Raider series, though. It was largely dead, and Resident Evil 2... they remade a PS1 game. I'm pretty sure these games warranted reboots. I think the only time you should ever reboot a series is when it's been dormant for way too long or just no longer has its same identity. Is the option of creating a new IP not on the table anymore? I say this because Aonuma doesn't see why people would want to return to the old Zelda format. They say it's because Nintendo doesn't like to repeat the same things, but new Super Mario Bros? I remember when Nintendo revealed Emio, it looked like this new horror game, right? Now there was raised eyebrows all over this game. It even started garnering some hype. It seemed like Nintendo was actually creating something new. Now that didn't actually happen, and it just ended up being a new entry in the Famicom Detective Club series, something that nobody wanted, but for a moment there, things were getting kinda spicy. I mean, think about it. When do you ever see these companies create new properties these days? Nintendo is completely allergic to adding anything new to their roster. PlayStation, they have Astrobot now, which started off as a tech demo to show off the DualSense controller, and Xbox was sitting on an absolute gold mine with Hi-Fi Rush, and decided to just toss it in the trash. None of this would even be a problem if it wasn't for the fact that these companies sell us expensive plastic boxes in order to play these games. Tell me, is it just me, or does it seem like everything is trying to be an open world? The most clearest examples are obviously Breath of the Wild, but Halo never used to be an open world series. And I don't remember Gears of War having open world aspects. I mean, Elden Ring, as good as that game is, it's an open world Souls game. And Ubisoft, they kind of do this with everything regardless, but we've even seen Nintendo toy with the idea of Mario becoming an open world with Bowser's Fury. And I kid you not, there's been rumbling that the next Resident Evil game is going to be open world. I just don't understand it. I mean, doesn't it take far more resources to develop these games now? And I'm personally getting sick of playing open worlds. I don't care what anybody says, my backlog is not getting any smaller, and these games just keep on growing and growing in scope. Why does it feel like every AAA game has to be this larger-than-life experience with over 100 hours of content? The entire reason people come to the Nintendo platform is because they're known for their quality, not their quantity. I don't know about you, but 152 shrines? No, I'm not doing it. I can't. That's outside of all the other content in Tears of the Kingdom that just felt so copy and paste to me. Even the dungeons in this game feel like, there are 3 more terminals to go. You can do it, Link. I believe in you. It seems like after the Xbox 360 era, publishers forgot the value of a focused linear experience with solid gameplay and a straightforward story. When I think of games like Gears of War, Dead Rising, Metal Gear Rising, Revengeance, etc., I think of games that had this really strong gameplay mechanic, and then they just centered their entire game around it. Gears of War, it centered its game around cover-based shooting and pushing the enemy forward. Hell, Nintendo basically laid out the groundwork for this. Mario can jump, and he spends the entire game jumping. Like, that's simplicity itself. And if you want to talk about straightforward story, Princess Peach has been kidnapped and you have to go save her. Why does it seem like all of these games have a million moving pieces and they try to tell these complex narratives? I still don't know the story of Tears of the Kingdom because so far it's been presented to me in random order. Can I please have something locked behind progression? I can't even have the game story, man. Wow, so much freedom. You know, there's so many ways to not have fun in a video game, and it kind of feels like this game doesn't stop you from any of them. And it's all for the sake of freedom. There's other ways, that you can make your game feel big rather than actually being big. Ocarina of Time, for example, that game felt big even though it was crammed onto a Nintendo 64 cartridge. In a sense, it kinda already feels like the bombs have dropped. We're just waiting to see the dust settle. So many people are just saying screw modern gaming and going back to retro. I see a lot of people that only play indie games now. And seeing games like Space Marine 2 gain massive success feels like a big win for gamers, because we're just moving on. We're actually buying games now that are worth our time. And me personally, I don't listen to reviews anymore. I pretty much only buy from the publishers I trust. I don't touch any of these live service multiplayer games, and I don't want politics shoved down my throat. Overall, I've been drifting further and further from consoles. Like that bullshit with Sony? No, I will keep my $700, thank you. I'm just glad that we're all able to come to our senses and really start voting with our wallets. So you might have noticed that during my barely coherent ramblings, me mentioning Nintendo a lot, and that's because I feel like the algorithm's been pushing my content towards something more Nintendo adjacent. And I say this because I made a couple of videos about the Nintendo Switch 2 and my expectations for the next Zelda game, and they should be on the screen right now if you're interested. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Alright, bye.